Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's Dublin Festival of History event, Pavee Roads Home. The Dublin Festival of History is an annual free festival brought to you by Dublin City Council and organised by Dublin City Libraries in partnership with the Dublin City Council Culture Company. This event is being presented by Finglas Library. Without further ado, let me hand you over to the panel.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, I'm John Kelly and I'm part of the Pavee Point panel, and we're here to discuss the Pavee Roads Home project, which works to bring traveller history, culture and heritage to life through a unique blend of family trees, community mapping and digital technology. I'd like you to introduce you now to the panel. We have Biddy Collins and Bridgie Collins, who are both primary health care workers in the Eastern region. And we have Martin Reilly and Michael Collins, who are both men's health workers with Pavee Point. So to start off, Michael, you've been involved in supporting and leading out the Pavee Roads Home piece from the very beginning. So how did it come about?
Yeah, so how it came about was we were out in Finglas one day working with a group of traveller men out there, and we were sitting around the table, and for us, we're always looking for new ways of working with traveller men, new kind of creative ways that we can work on different projects. And one of the lads turned around and said that he watched a programme called Who Do You Think You Are? And he found it very interesting. So he said, wouldn't it be great if we done something around it? Because he said, no one knew, even when he said it, nobody knew who their great-grandparents were, their ancestors, or where they came from. They had no information. And he said, wouldn't it be good if we done a project like that to find out the people that we came from and where they came from?
Great. So just from a spark of an idea.
Yeah.
So, and a conversation. So going from an idea into the reality, and we see all the work behind us, and there's a website now, and there's been huge partnerships as well. So how did it move from an idea into becoming a reality?
So yeah, then how it became a reality was then when, so me and Andy went back to Pavee Point. We sat down and we discussed ways of looking for funding to support this project. And so we seen funding from Dublin City Council Culture Company, and we applied for it and we got it. And they were great, they supported us, and so then it kind of kicked off from there. And as part of that, then what we done was, before we got a genealogist or anyone else involved, we actually went out and met with the women, the traveller women that work with in the primary healthcare team. And myself, Martin Reilly and Martin Radigan went out and we asked them loads of questions. Whatever we could think of, we asked plenty of questions, and we took all the information down. And so even just from off the top of their head, like, the women could actually go back 200 years in my family tree.
Just from having the chats? Just from
and I didn't know, like, I was thinking to myself, like, would it be possible, like, that they actually did know this, like, you know? But, so then we actually got a genealogist involved, and so I gave him all the information that we had, that we got from the women.
Kind of informal conversations that came up.
And he came back and everything that they said was there, and they were correct, like, you know? That surprised me, like, because, like, without that information, he even said it, they had lots of information. Do you know what I mean? It was great information to give us, and it surprised me at what he knew. Like, they even go back 200 years off the top of their head.
Okay, so the accuracy
without even no records or whatever. It's just stories that they had themselves.
Wow, fantastic. And so, and there's a couple of key elements to Pavee Roads Home. One is there's the family tree, and that's been archived by the National Library, and then also a community mapping piece, and I think the Maynooth University Geography Department partnered on that. So we're going to focus on both those pieces in today's conversation, and starting with the community mapping piece. So we're going to just open up the questions to the whole group now. So everybody's welcome to answer these questions. But you can see here there's an orange kind of board just behind Michael, and it's the Pavee Roads Home board. We'll also have a website that we'll tell everybody about later. But the community mapping piece is focused. There's 3 maps there. There's a map of Eden Derry, Finglas, and the Belcamp area. And looking, if we focus on the one in Eden Derry, on the map in Eden Derry, it really speaks to a way of life in camps at a time when travellers had much more freedom to roam the Irish landscape. So just a broad question, what was life back then? And Brígí and Biddy, asking you in particular, because you would have grown up in the camps in Eden Derry, is that right?
Talk about the camps.
Yeah. So do you know when you were younger?
Yeah.
Do you know the camps that was in Eden Derry?
We were there to promise, we were there around Eden Derry.
Yeah.
And all the camps that we used to go to, we picked a sheltering camp out for the winter.
Yeah.
And the summer camps. And there's a
So
lot
what would be a summer camp?
the summer camp would be a Blake Road with no bushes or things like this. It'd be up like this one here, there. We'd look for that in the winter. For to build the tents up and, you know.
Yeah.
At that time, it was a grand time.
So there was a lot of camps in Eden Derry, and you mentioned a summer camp there, and the reason that was picked was because it's kind of wide open space. It was quite open.
Yeah.
Whereas in the winter camps would have more cover, would they? They'd be kind of...
Yeah, it'd be summer camp and the winter camp, as we call it.
Yeah.
And the summer camp would be all sheltery, but the Blake camp would be a Blake camp. There was one camp called the Scout Killal. There was a Killal running by, and we used to start there for ages, because the children are swimming it, and the men are swimming it, and the whole lot swim there.
And you mentioned Killal, is that like a river?
Killal, didn't
No, it was a
Canal,
Norney-
yeah.
It
Canal,
was a
yeah.
Norney canal.
Yeah.
And we used to go in and swim, and the men would go in and swim, and the young boys and young girls would go in and swim. It was a lovely camp. It was very wide,
Yeah.
and there was only a small hedge in it. And that's what we call a summery camp.
Great.
So we would stay there. We'd wash our clothes in the canal.
Okay, so a place for play, but also had a function that was
Exactly.
like... Yeah.
Now, that time when I was small, we wouldn't be allowed to go into the canal if the father and mother didn't tell you. You're not allowed in there for to get drowned. So my kids, when I was herding up my children, I used to teach them the same. You're not allowed into the canal unless we give you permission to go in and swim.
Yeah.
And we used to put a tube around them, a pumped up tube, and we tie a rope. And we let the children paddle in and out through it, and we'd pull them in and pull them out. You know, it was a beautiful camp. It was a summery camp.
It sounds
And
like...
that's how we used to call it the Scour Bridge. Now, the winter camp, we'd go looking for a winter camp, would be a big ditch. So we could light the campfire at the two tents.
Yeah, cover.
With two tents and a caravan. And it was very sheltery. The wind wouldn't be blowing the fire. And around that campfire, we would be cooking, baking, and doing what we'd have to do around that fire. So that was a sheltery camp.
Yeah.
That we call that sheltery camp.
So, like in the Eden Derry area, there's like 20 or 30 camps, I think, identified. Maybe there was more, but and each have different names as well. But very functional. Like so, like you're saying, in the winter time, there'd be a lot of cover. You could have fires there, and you'd be protected by like the high ditches. But in the summertime, it sounds fantastic for a child to be able to play like that.
It was lovely in the summer.
Yeah.
Definitely beautiful in the summer. It was a bit hard in the winter now.
Hard, yeah.
Yeah. You know, but we'd have the two campfires, two tents, and we'd have a shelter tent, and that was the middle one.
Yeah.
And our fathers would be a lovely shelter tent, and we'd light the fire in the middle. And it wouldn't burn the bags, because that's the bags was made for the campfire. And we'd have a tilly lamp. But it was hard in the winter, with the wind and the rain and the snow and the sleet, whatever. We were used to it.
Yeah.
It's not like now. The children's not used to it now.
No.
Well, at that time, you see, you were used to it. We were reared up with that, and our mothers and fathers were reared up with it. We thought there was no other life only that. That the travellers would never get houses. That was never in our brain, our father's mother brain, that we'd ever live in houses like local people. Well, the local people that time when we used to travel, that great time for us.
Yeah.
Very good time for us.
So
We'd all stay up again them and they give us the straw and the hay for the bonies, the straw for the tent. They give us all milk and potatoes and things like that.
Okay, so very supportive. Very supportive and good relationship with the locals.
It's always wicked, not like today, but it's a different time now with the travellers, isn't it? Doing things and robbing and things, but then everyone is blamed for the one thing, but the half of them was not like that.
The tin smitten was out that time. My father used to do tin smitten. Her father do it. My husband still does it today. And my father would make the tins, and we would bring them to the local people,
Yeah.
and we would trade for some potatoes or a piece of yellow bacon or a tub of butter, and we would trade.
Yeah.
So the farmers got to know us very, very well and trusted us, and we trust them.
Yeah.
And then my father used to buy them the cans and the buckets that be laking for the farmers, and
Yeah.
he would buy them for them.
Yeah, they'd fix them.
He'd fix them.
Yeah.
And would give us some potatoes and eggs and straw and hay for the horses.
It's a kind of a bartering system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many places, just in Edenderry alone, and there's so many names on the maps. I think we were talking about the Pinkeen Road before, and that names that you'd know so well growing up, and I think like were identified in the maps. But without a map like Pavee Roads Home, those names might disappear over the generations. So, like the different place names that came up, like in this project. Can you speak, like we were talking about Pinkeen Road before, can you tell me how the names came up for camps, maybe some of them?
Well, in the Pinkeen Road, as Biddy said, there was little Pinkeens, there was a big river, and there was little Pinkeens on it, and it was there was no ditch. It was more like a summer camp as well, and we had a big pump. There was a pump in the side of the road, so that was handy enough for the water. And that's the traveller put that name on it, the Pinkeen Road. So I met travellers away beyond Eden there, and they'd say, "And where are you stopping?" And I would say the Pinkeen Road, and they'd know exactly where the Pinkeen Road was.
Okay. And about like 20 or 30 camps like around the Edenderry area.
There was 20 or 30, yeah.
Yeah.
Around.
And we were chatting just before the cameras came on, and just really interesting that actually if you wanted to leave a marker, just let like other travellers in the area know where you were going, you'd throw the grass. Is that the right term?
We were leaving the Pinkeen Road, and we knew there was a couple of families following us on. When we'd come to the 4 crossroads or 3 crossroads, we would get a big clutch of grass, and we'd throw it, and we'd say, "We're going to the right." So they'd know exactly the road that we went. Or we were going to the left, and peg it at the left.
Yeah.
And they'd know what camp we were going to.
So kind of an unwritten code that was just known to yourselves.
That's the only way we could let people know what road we were going and what camp we were going to.
Yeah, and the length and breadth of roaming around like the Edenderry and Offaly area, those would it be with it around the Offaly area? Because we were talking beforehand as well, and just saying that like different travelling families would be kind of located in different counties. Is it kind of like that?
Well, everyone had their own counties,
Yeah.
you know, but we took to Offaly. How far we would go was to Tullamore and back. No further. But Biddy here would go up to Cavan, wouldn't you, Biddy?
Oh, we used to go on to Cavan in the summer. My father making the tins, and he'd go on to Cavan for a few months. Then we'd come back again. That way. Now, at the time we were growing up, we used to work in the bog. We'd foot turf in the bog.
Yeah.
There the Hayton, there, the Bona,
Yeah.
and the German bog. We'd put the turf there in the middle of summer, the June and July.
Summer work, so.
And it wasn't one bit hazy either. It was a big floor of turf. And when you'd have that floor of turf done for 300, for 4 pound or 3 pound, believe me, again the day I'd be finished, you'd know you had it done.
Yeah. And I'd say a cup
It was
of
a
tea.
nicer time, it was a homelier time, and it was different. You know, when you think back of it, you never forget.
And was everybody working up in the bog?
Everyone
and
had broken
footing
the bog,
turf?
yeah.
Everyone's family had worked in the bog.
Everyone's family had broken the bog.
It's a hard day's work. I'd say
It was
the cup of
we
tea
used to
is
call it
nice.
flat turf.
Yeah.
We picked the spuds in the winter, sometimes around Tullamore and Edenderry. It's all a
Whole beat.
healthy life.
So that all depended on relationships with farmers in the area.
We were very,
and good
very, very,
relationships.
very with good contact
Yeah.
with the farmers. And they were good to us, and we were good to them. As I said before, and I'll say it again, they put an awful lot of trust on us when they got to know us,
Yeah.
and we put it on them. And we had good relationship with them.
So, and that ended up bringing the turf. It brought in money, but it also brought in heat, and there
Exactly.
was food. And both daughters are tinsmiths. And we'll have questions for Martin and Michael as well, of course. But just like, do you have memories of like, would you have gone to markets with your fathers? Or do you have any memories of
Markets?
Like, or how did your father sell the work they did in tinsmithing?
Tinsmithing puppets.
Oh, they make the tins around the campfire.
Right, so it was for the
There was
campfire.
no markets. You wouldn't go to the market.
You would have went house to house.
I would go from house to house,
Yeah.
Okay.
From house to house sending them. Did you see James and Tom McDonald on the television the other night?
Oh, they were doing the heritage.
They were
yeah,
making the tins on it.
Yeah. So
There's no one now doing that now. There's no one doing it. I have 5 brothers, and there's only one picked it up, and that was James. There's only about 2 people now that can tinsmith in the road today. They don't know how. When he died, that'll be forgot. We
Okay.
all forgot. We used to make flowers over Christmas.
So
And for Christmas, we get crepe paper.
yeah.
And we'd make flowers of all colours. We'd go around the town, around the houses and buy them. Buy a bunch of flowers for it to go into the Sacred Heart and things like that.
I made a crepe paper.
Yeah, or crepe paper.
So
We make them sometimes in their job. You get the crepe, what you get now and I don't know, it's all gone. Different time, gone.
You do that before Christmas.
All the before Christmas.
So it's part
Now,
of the tradition before
Eve,
Christmas. Yeah.
Christmas Eve. Did you ever hear tell of people going out in the Ran? You won't hear it now. We used to go on the Ran.
On the
The Ran used to be, well, you'll see it in the country yet down the shops. If you were there Christmas Eve, you would see it in the shop, the country shops. We dress ourselves up.
Ran boys.
And we go in the pubs and the houses. And we sing the Ran, the king of all birds. And Stephen's Day was caught in the 4, up with the kettle and down with the pan, and give me the money to bury the Ran. And they'd always give us a few shillings. They'd always throw a few pennies.
I want to throw a few pennies. I need to learn the words.
The likes of he doesn't understand it. They've never done it.
So this is like the culture and the traditions are getting lost now through the generations. Like, so you talk the tinsmithing, and you have one brother out of 5 who learned how to tinsmith, and so kind of that's a craft that's kind of it's dying now with the generations.
Out, yeah. There's only 2 tinsmiths now.
And
that was it is.
speaking of culture and heritage, and we're hoping to have a song here this evening, but the importance of storytelling and song, was that very alive in the camps? And you've already mentioned it there, Biddy, actually.
We
about
would.
Christmas.
We'd have the campfire in the evening time. We'd light up a big fire, and with the tilly lamp, we'd all sit around the fire, and everybody will tell their own story. And then we would count to 20 to see who'll sing a song. So we used to do that in the evening time.
Yeah.
That's all gone.
Our fathers and mothers went to quit when we promised people about Christmas. Christmas Eve and maybe Christmas Day, they'd always have a few bottles of stout. Our fathers and mothers now, they'd light a fire and sing around and sing a song, the old songs. And that's why we learned a few of them today. So they're gone too.
Yeah.
Now my father and her father used to shoe their own horse. They shoe their own horse that time. Buy the horseshoes and put them in the fire and shoe their own horse. It's all gone. Gone the whole.
Okay. So
It was lovely, but it's all gone completely.
So a very different life.
A different life altogether, yeah.
And you're taught like I suppose very interesting for Michael and Martin to be part of the project and hearing the stories and going down to Edenderry and coming to life. Like, when you were, like, did you get a sense of the history, and did anything surprising come out of you from the community mapping?
For me, it was very surprising, yeah, because as the women said there, like, for our lives now today, like the young boys and girls, we would never talk about that, or even the language can't. Like, that's even kind of going now as well. Like the generation that's growing up now, like, you'd never hear them speaking of that. But the older travellers, you would, when they're talking to one another, you'd hear that they can't as well. Like, but for me, down there, visiting down there in Edenderry and just seeing the way they lived before, like, it's absolutely, like, it's brilliant. Like, and we went down to a camp before as well, and we jumped over the hedging, and the women was telling us that there's all markings on the tree, and we were going through this like little forest, and there was birds and stuff carved onto the trees and everything. It was just absolutely amazing. That's there, like, probably nearly 40 or 50 years ago, and it's still carved there as well. And the names written on, like, Bridgie's husband James as well. We went down the second time again with myself, Michael and James, and he was telling us before at the side it was like a little lake as well, and him and his father and his uncle built a wagon there. And over the wall, all the small little bits of steel, the things that they didn't use for the wagon they didn't need, and the bottles of stout, empty bottles that had returned for 2p on the side of it and stuff. That, he says, if you look over that wall, he said, he goes under all of that, he said, there'd be some parts of the wagons that we built from 40, 50 years ago would be still there. And we looked over and there was the bottles and bits of little pieces of wagons that was there from 40, 50 years ago that was never touched. It was absolutely amazing, like, brilliant.
And for you, Michael?
Yeah, for me, like, it was one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved with the project, you know, like even going down there and with the women and James and going down to the camps and seeing the camps, because I often heard about the camps, but I've never seen them, like, do you know what I mean? From stories and stuff. And so when we went down, they were able to tell us all the stories, so we were recording the stories and we got the proper coordinates of the camps. And that now is the map, the story map, and that's online. But it was also important to record the stories, because them stories can be lost over time. Do you know what I mean? And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved in the project.
And when you mentioned coordinates here, earlier on you had mentioned the accuracy of the oral stories. So actually the place names and where Bridgie and Biddy are talking about actually was really accurate in terms of whereabouts and
we all went down on the bus. We went in the bus, and so they were able to bring us around. And there was, as they were saying, there was about 20 to 30 camps, but that was in a small area in Eden-Derry, like. So say in the Offaly area, there would have been even more. Do you know what I mean? But within that small area, there was 20 to 30 camps, and they brought us to every single one of them, like. And then they told us the names and why the names are on it. Yeah. Like, there was, as they were saying, one thing I didn't know was that there was a difference in the camp, like the winter camps and the summer camps. And there was a camp there called the Woody Cross Road. And the reason why that was a winter camp, because the trees were up very high and they stopped the wind and the rain from getting in, you know. So that, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, so little things like that I like knowing.
Yeah,
because I'd like to know a little bit of history about the place.
And I think that's really important what you're mentioning is like actually the focus in the map that we're talking about is Eden-Derry, which is a town in Offaly. It's a small area in Offaly, but in the wider part of Offaly there was more and more camps. Yeah. So just in that area and just the history in Eden-Derry alone is quite incredible.
Yeah, but that would have been only one family. So you'd have a lot of traveller families who would have done different. They'd have their own, say, county or area that they would have travelled in, and they'd have their own names put on it. Yeah. So as part of this, because like it'd be great to see all like the majority of traveller families starting to record the place that they used to travel in, and getting the names and recording and having it there for people in time.
Absolutely, and we'll come to the importance of this project later in the conversation. It really strikes me when both yourself and Martin are speaking, you're speaking with real pride of the life that Bridgie and Biddy that you grew up with. It's very much an intergenerational project, Pavee Roads Home, like talks about and like actually educates us about. And that kind of intergenerational piece, and we were talking before we came on this evening, and just like, you know, just that freedom to roam and travel and enjoy the summers that you were talking about earlier, Bridgie, that actually that's it, through the generations that is getting lost. Because Bridgie and Biddy, like, I think you grew up in the camps and ended up moving to Dublin. So the focus is, there's Eden-Derry, Finglas and Belcamp. But am I right, Bridgie and Biddy, that you would have moved to the Finglas area, the Finglas camp?
50 years ago we moved up to Finglas.
Yeah.
And we're there ever since.
And there ever since.
But we do get into the vans and the cars and we go back down around Eden-Derry. And we go to all the camps.
Yeah.
And we'd stay an hour at Torah H camp. Then we'd go into the graveyard where our people is buried. Biddy's husband is buried in Eden-Derry. Our father and mother is buried in Eden-Derry.
Some people, when they die, always goes back to the county. You'd love to go back to the county where you were there, till you die. But more than doesn't. There's a lot of them buried now in Dublin here. But more than has that belief that you go back to your own county. Travellers fully believes.
So the connection there is still very strong and alive for you from between Finglas and Eden-Derry. And it just came up earlier, like actually the kind of opportunities or the freedoms to travel. Has it become less and less over the years? Like so for your own children, would you have brought them did you have the opportunity to bring them travelling more than maybe your children might have with their kids?
It's a long time ago since I brought when they were only small. All my family now is married to biddies. But I did take them down for a couple of weeks, down on Eden Derry, there when they got the holidays from school. But that was in there, they haven't been back down since. And they don't know as much cant as what we do.
Yeah.
Because whatever is the reason, they don't want even to pick it up. I couldn't even talk cant to my girls and boys, and they said, well, Mommy, what are you talking about? What's that word? They don't even know. They don't know the cant words of
We
penal.
never learned it. We were learning how our families and our 70th generation, our grannies and grandfathers and things like that. We were learning that, but ours wasn't learning it, you see.
Yeah.
It all died away when we came in living and they went to school and it died. But it was a pity it ever died out. Because if I see now someone come up the road, I'd say, he's a shade. You wouldn't know what that'd be, would it?
No,
Would you know what that'd be?
I'm nodding my head, but I don't know. No.
Huh?
I'm nodding my head, but I don't know. No, I don't.
A
what
great
is that?
job.
And if I say, he's a shade coming, well, I'd know with my father and mother that was a guard.
Okay.
He was a guard, it was a shade. Well, that was a guard that was coming. We knew all them words. Today, no.
Or a grey jog.
A grey joke.
A grey jog.
That's a grey joke.
Here's a grey jog coming up the Tober.
The Tober.
Yeah.
So
So what's that so we can understand?
That's a guard coming up the road.
up the.
That's a policeman coming up the
Travelers all
road.
their own culture, their own culture.
So alive and vibrant.
It's all gone now.
Alive and vibrant
And when
language.
we died, we gone worse, there'd be nothing at all.
Yeah. And that's like so. The language is alive and vibrant when you're sort of growing up.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Oh,
crafts
God,
like
yeah.
tinsmith and the culture of storytelling and song was alive and well. So like this is actually, I think we're in the middle of Traveller Pride Week. It's going on for 2 weeks. And just like coming back to that sense of pride, like that Martin and Michael have for the culture, is that what you'd hope for, like for a project like Pavee Roads Home, that it just brings back the importance of the culture and the
I
language?
think so, yeah. Yeah. It should be.
Yeah.
But you know, on that, John, why for me it's important as well, because I see a lot now with young travellers. They're going to school, they're applying for jobs, even when they're like, I'm from Dublin, Coolock. I don't have a Coolock accent. To me, like, it'd be a traveller accent. But I find a lot now with young travellers, they're, even through social media and all the negative attention travellers get sometimes, that they're actually starting to hide who they are. And they're hiding their identity, and sometimes they might even be ashamed to even say they're a traveller. And for me, like, this is one of the reasons why I like doing this project, is start recording it and showing people, like showing the people that we came from, where they came from, that you should actually be proud, and there's nothing to be embarrassed of.
Actually, and a history told.
Yeah.
The traveller history told by travellers.
Because young travellers nowadays, they wouldn't know the history of travellers. Like they said about the cant. Like, I wouldn't be that good at cant. But back then they needed it more. We don't need it as much. So you have travellers now that be going to school, and they'd be staying in school, they'd be working with settled people, so they'd be mixing a lot more. So they wouldn't need that language anymore.
Yeah.
But it's still important, it should be recorded.
And hugely, like what's been talked about here today, it wasn't available to me in school. Like, you know, there's no school books about this, and how important is it? Yeah.
But we travellers would you'd mix more with settled people now. But back then you mix with them, but you didn't mix as much as we do now. So you'd be working with them, as I said, you'd be going to school or going to college, whatever it is. There'd be a lot more mixing.
Yeah, but and we know each other now because we work together, and I'm very conscious of like how heritage and culture is important to you, and I suppose that's one of the drivers for you, is that actually, while this is happening, that actually travellers do hold on to their culture and identity and actually celebrate it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like even today, like I've done all my years in school as well, and of all my years, like there was never, the length I'm in school, talked about traveller culture, like never, ever. Even up today, I don't think that a teacher has ever mentioned traveller culture in a school, or learn a small bit to get everyone to know what the traveller's background and stuff like. But never since I've been in school, they've never ever talked about traveller culture.
I think that's going to be changing. But as Martin said, I think that's a start. Like from so when you're starting with schools, that is being taught in schools for young travellers. Do you know what I mean? That they'll actually learn more about, because as the women were saying, like our life is completely different than their life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's going to even change even more. And their way of life, like even the travelling, I'd love to do something like that around Edenderry, going from camp to camp, setting up a camp, giving it a tent. Now, I might hate it when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I'd love to be
you
able
have
to
the opportunity.
that chance of doing it.
Yeah,
even with my own children.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
Now, the old people years ago had a great belief in cures. And a cure of the chin cough. A cure of arthritis. They had all beliefs in that. They find out on the cure of the ringworm, the cure of the thrush, and all like that. They find out in a house now, if we go around that, we find out where the cure was. Well, then if that traveller came in and that cured the cure as you go, and that child to be cured. And now a lot of the old people, like my granny, the lot of us, that years now, they had their own cures and they'd make them up. And there was a belief in them.
So that's so cures and healers.
Yeah.
That's another kind of tradition in the culture that's dying out.
A lot of faith.
Yeah,
stuff
and
like
faith
that, you know.
healers as well.
It's all gone.
Yeah, and something that, and thanks a million for that, Biddy, because that's another element as well that's so hugely important to the culture. But it's just come because you mentioned the difference between life for now for travellers and the life then. So going back to Biddy and Bridgie, and just like when we look at the different camps here, and we have Finglas, Bell Camp, and Edenderry represented, how do you see the differences for in traveller life now when you compare life to growing up in Edenderry and like on the Finglas camps?
I can see an awful big difference and a big change.
In what way?
It's not like years ago at all. I think the biggest majority of travellers now, especially the young people, I think they want to be like settled people, which they never will be. If you're born a traveller, you'll always be a traveller. You can't deny who you are. And I think you should be proud to be who you are. But I can see a big change.
Yeah.
And I'd say Biddy can see a bigger one.
Well, the travellers that time, if the likes of us even grown up, 14 and 15, 16, I remember back in a lot of travellers, my father and mother, all them, we used to even dress different. With the big wide plaid skirts and the black shawls and the coloured rugs and the old women had a handkerchief and all that's gone.
That's the dress as well.
That's we've seen the forehand now today, if you with the forehand short to them, and they'd laugh and you said, is that the way that you dressed? That's the way the other dressed. That's gone now. Lord, all that's gone.
Just that importance of instilling that sense of pride back in the traveller identity, which is what you speak
It's all mini skirts now.
Well, they wouldn't suit me, Bridget. And then I'm gonna. So there's two elements, like we said, to the Pavee Roads Home project, and one is the community mapping that we focused on, but also a hugely important part was the family trees. And Martin and Michael, you've been very heavily involved with the family tree part, and we can see that behind us here. Michael, Martin, will open these up to you as well. But just along with the mapping pieces, Michael, these family trees that we see behind, I think one family, it's your family tree, Michael, isn't that right? And I think the other one.
Yeah, that's my family tree there, yeah.
And Martin, there's one there behind you as well? Yeah, and that's your family there. So, and these are all available on the website, which we'll tell you about in a little bit. But the two family trees, and they're archived in the National Library, but in doing the work on the family trees, Michael, did it unearth anything surprising for you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of stood out for me and Martin, and the other Martin that was involved as well, was having our family members that was actually in the army. I didn't know, like Biddy be my great aunt, so her grandfather was Tom Collins, and he was actually in the Connacht Rangers, and I didn't know that. So now that we know it, like, and even Martin there was a lot of his family members, the ancestors, that was in the army as well. And that's, we don't, like, it's something that's not talked about, do you know what I mean? So even at that, even back then, like, travellers have always been around, they've always been part of Irish society, do you know what I mean? So even stuff like that, to even tell young travellers that they were there and were in the army, in the Connacht Rangers and stuff like that, that's something that come up and that surprised me. And another thing that I found kind of funny now when I seen it was when I found me great-great-grandparents' marriage cert, and on it was said the day they got married, their names and tinsmith and their address at the time. His was everywhere, and hers was everywhere and nowhere.
Everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found it like, so the person who put that down, because back then they didn't know how to read and write either.
Yeah.
And you could see that they didn't even write down their own names, they put a cross on it. And that person put down everywhere and nowhere. And it just made me laugh, like but it shows you how hard it was back then for them.
Yeah.
That you don't even realise, like, do you know what I mean? When you think back, they had nowhere, they were living everywhere and nowhere, like they were living on the side of the road. So they had it was very, very hard times for them.
Yeah. So, and this is how far back, this is your great-grandparents?
So they would have got married in 1907. I was actually in the church here a couple of weeks ago that they got married in 1907, so.
Yeah. Everywhere and nowhere, that's a great address.
There was a funny one, all right, yeah.
And for yourself, Martin?
Just as Michael said there, for me, surprisingly as well, like, it was my great-great-great-grandfather. He was in the army as well, the Connacht Rangers in County Boyle. But that was surprising for me as well, because like you have a family member that was in the army before, but was never documented. Like these things are not documented.
Yeah. And when you found out that for the first time, did it have an impact on you?
It had an impact on me because like even my father and my uncles, like they never knew anything about this until I told them that I was doing a family tree, and I got most of my information off them. And if it wasn't for the older people, the older generation, I would have never got that done. Never.
But even at that, John, like, so when they joined the army, so some of the stuff that come in that, like, I've never seen a photo of, say, of the person, the two men that we're talking about, and it gives a description of the person. So like black hair, brown eyes, 5'3", tattoos, scars, and all that, and it just gives you a bit more detail of the person. Yeah. Which is good to read as well. Like.
So bring your family history to life.
Yeah, and even just like I know that one of the things that was on it, he had the man that I'm talking about. He had two tattoos, and I was surprised at the two tattoos he had, because no one ever knew about him. So he had a tattoo of the Irish flag, and he had a tattoo of the American flag. And why he had a tattoo of the American flag, I'd love to know, but I don't think we'll ever find out. But why was the American flag put there, like in his arm?
There's a bit of mystery.
Was there any association there? What was it? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So just little things like that you now know.
Yeah, a very different experience. Like my experience with history is reading books. It's quite passive, but you've been incredibly proactive in bringing the history to life. It must have meant an awful lot to your families.
Yeah. Well, see, our history is like, it's in these women. Do you know what I mean? The older travellers, they all have it in their heads. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? We just need to get it out and put it down. So in time, that's always there.
Because that kind of tradition of storytelling now is something else. So would that be dying out as well? And this is a new way of holding on to the stories and passing the stories on. Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to say about just the impact that doing the family tree has had for you?
Yeah, for me, even just my own family, often like Biddy, a lot of people I talk about will be related to Biddy as well. And even just be able to tell them stories, and like I know Biddy didn't know a couple of things when I was telling her what happened or how people died or where they're buried and stuff like that. So even just sharing them stories and even just talking about them and seeing the difference in people when you're the older travellers, when you are telling them different information that they didn't know, it's good. Yeah.
And Martin, what about yourself? Just like having been part of Pavee Roads Home and done the family tree, the impact for yourself.
I'm glad I done the family tree at the end. Like at the start of it, it was very hard going to get the information and stuff because I didn't know who to go to. But then I'm working in Pavee Point, and the women I used to go into them nearly every week with my phone. And I used to put my phone on record and I used to ask them a lot of questions. And only for that, I would never got that family tree done. But I'm glad that I did get it done, because in around the middle of it, when I was doing it, I was stopping it. Because it was just too hard getting all that information. Yeah. But now, I'm glad I have it done, because I do bring that to my family and let them have a look at it. And the information that's on that, they never knew the information that I got. They never knew anything about it.
But a huge amount of work went into this, and you can see, but it's been really worth it. And I think that there's a message in there, would you say, for young travellers who are inquisitive about their family and their history and their culture, just to start asking questions. Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, definitely. Start asking the older travellers. Just document it yourself. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And even from their information, you can go on websites. There's websites to irishgenealogy.ie. And you kind of have half information, you can get some information on that, and it's free. Do you know what I mean? That's how I started off doing it. So when they were giving me the information, then I'd go on to that. And So for me, yeah, young travellers need to even just talk to an older person in their family, because the information is there, they have it. It's just talking to them and getting it.
Yeah, and you can just see how much it lights you up,
And
inspires you just to do
when
that.
you start, when you get them to start talking, they won't stop talking. Then about it.
But you know what?
That's a
Also,
great thing.
what kind of stood out for me as well, like even though, like, say I'm Collins myself, so I went back in the Collins line. But you knew so much information about, like, you could say to them, someone that mightn't be related to me, and I mentioned their name, and they'd be able to go back on that person. Do you know what I mean? You knew so much information about travellers, even across the, like, say, the Midlands or wherever it was. There was loads of information. Do you know?
Yeah,
About other families.
So many questions to ask and so much to celebrate. Yeah, absolutely. We've got, apparently, I think we've got some YouTube listeners out there, and we're going to have some questions from them. And going to have a final group question to you all about this Pavee Roads Home in general. We're hoping to have a song, and just Bridgie, like, we're not going to have it just yet, Bridgie, but would you be happy to sing a song for us this evening?
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking it's One Starry Night?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that song, if you don't mind?
Well, it's about a woman disappearing. That's how I got to know it.
And if we listen to
She
this
got
song-
up and she left.
Yeah.
Nobody knew where she went to.
And if we listen to the song,
I think
we
you'd
might find out
have to
more.
hear
Yeah,
the
you'd
song
have to
to
hear
know the story. It is a very good song.
Yeah. So, and we really appreciate you doing that. So thanks a million. But we're going to come back to that now in a second. We've got a few questions before then. But before we go to the questions from the World Wide Web, we've got one final group question here for you all. And that is just for you all to kind of maybe answer this, is why do you think a project like Pavee Roads Home is important for recording traveller history? Why is it important?
I think myself, I shouldn't be forgot. What Michael and Martin is doing, I think they're doing a good job. And I think they were right to do the story in the family tree. And I think they should pick it up more.
Yeah.
And rest of the groups around as well.
So
that's my
it grows on from here, so maybe other groups could do it
Yeah.
and take it on.
Not to let it die out.
Yeah, let this be the start of something.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
So, just on that, Pavee Roads Home, like, it's going to be made into a toolkit. So, like, what I'd be hoping is that other projects, traveller projects across Ireland, would actually do it, because, as you said, it's really down to us, because we're travellers. We need to start documenting and writing our own history. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Even though it's my own family history, it's still traveller history as well. So the more travellers that do it, the more we're documenting our own selves.
Okay, so that's kind of coming into, it was my last question for you, but it's kind of the next steps for where this is going.
Yeah.
So you're mentioning, like, so there's a toolkit, and I know currently our team, the Pavee Point Men's Health team, are working on community mapping a piece, and that's kind of focusing on the Coolock area, isn't it? Yeah. But basically that's like a pilot now and just kind of mapping traveller life and experiences in that area.
That's right.
And being able to document life, and also the map from kind of a traveller perspective, and kind of just the stories that come up and the issues that come up there. So that's underway at the moment. Yeah. But along with that, there's a digital toolkit, and the idea is that travellers from across the country, maybe further afield, that actually can take this toolkit and actually map their own areas. And it's actually gone further afield, I think, to Indonesia, hasn't it?
Yeah. So out of that, you'd want, like, so it's Coolock. So what we want. So when the women went from Edenderry to Finglas, some travellers went to Coolock, and some of them went back into Finglas. But my family went to Coolock and stayed in Coolock. So what we're trying to do is just record the history of Coolock for travellers. And we also record the history of Finglas for travellers. So why they went there, where the camps were in Finglas, where the camps were in Coolock. So the more that's done, as I said, the better.
Okay, and if people want to check out the website, they want to see the Pavee Roads Home, the community mapping and the family trees, they're available. I think it's paveeroads.pavee.ie.
It's on the Pavee Point website.
Yeah, Pavee Point website, and if you look, Pavee Roads Home. Pavee Roads Home.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. We're not finished yet. I think we might have a few more questions. Thanks very much. And this is for Biddy and Oh, Mary Bridget, you've been named here as well. So Biddy and Bridgie. So what was your favourite thing or your favourite memory about life on the road? So if you had a particular memory or a thing that goes that really stands out from you when you think of life on the road.
Well, my favourite memory was me family, father and mother, my granny and grandfather, and the things that we used to do around the campfire is making the bread and doing the cooking at the fire, and then in the evening time we would make some flowers. We would make bunches of flowers and we'd bring them out to the houses and we'd sell them. And especially in the summertime, it was absolutely beautiful. That was my best memory of being on the road. And I will never forget it.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful time on the road.
Yeah, and beautiful memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Biddy?
Well, my memory, I always think in it, and I always talk to my daughters and my granddaughters and things, of the life we had, and it was a peaceful life, not like today. You go out and you weren't afraid, and in the camps or where you went to, you weren't afraid to go nowhere. Not like today is a different world. We were in a different world after that time.
Yeah.
And a different life, a different everything, and it changes so much. That's my...
So memories.
And memories, and
peaceful.
where we used to be over Christmas, and what we used to do, and light the fire, and we had a turkey or a hen or whatever we'd have, we'd cook them in the fire over Christmas, the big opened up fire. And it's always in our brain, you never forget.
And good connections with the settled people.
Yeah.
We
So
had
a
great
few brothers there, well,
connections,
three of them died anyway, two of them, they'd always talk about it, and they love to talk about it today, and you know, when you'd meet them, and the old people of our ages now, we always sit down and we talks about it.
Yeah. Sitting around those fires, it does sound.
You don't
It
forget.
does sound, you know. And you mentioned peaceful and.
Now, they used to
it
go
felt
out that
really
time
safe.
hunting. Did you ever hear of hunting? Catching rabbits and hares. They'd have a greyhound. Every traveller would have 2 or 3 dogs.
Yeah.
My father loved dogs. Oh, he'd have about 5 or 6 of them. And they'd go out hunting through the fields with the dog. And they'd catch a hare or a rabbit. We'd hang them up there and we'd cook them tomorrow. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Cook the hare and cook the rabbit in a big pot in the fire with a piece of bacon and carrots and parsnips and things, and that's all gone. That you think of it,
There's a lot to say
you
over
never
there.
forget.
Yeah. Wow.
Freedom as well it was.
Yeah.
Freedom to travel.
Huge freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could travel. at
Oh,
that
we
point,
had
whereas
freedom.
Now you can't. You're stopped. Like the travelling is actually all stopped for travellers now because of new policies in place and
Yeah.
government bringing policies so it doesn't allow travellers to travel anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what's having a huge impact on it.
For the freedom to roam.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary Bridget. Do you miss it?
Yeah.
That's another question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's our final question. It's a good one to finish off on before Bridgie's going to kindly sing us a song. So what would you like to see happen for traveller culture and history in the future, Mr. Everett? What would you like to see happen to traveller culture and history in the future?
Well, first of all, discrimination stopped at those travellers. Because we're really not that bad when you get to know us. It's like the settled people, there's good and bad in everyone. But if something happens in Cork, the travellers in Dublin get the blame. We're all painted with the one brush. So you have to come and live with us before you know us. I'd like for that to happen.
Okay.
For
Well,
me,
the same with
go on, Billy.
everywhere you go now today, no matter where you go, around the country up today, if there's a few travellers, and if they go to a pub, and one person fights, we're all blamed for that. We're all bad. I don't think that that's fair. I had one brother that was going to a pub for 40 years. I think for 40 years. And he went in with a few mates of his. There was a bit of a row going on. And he never done anything in this pub in his life. And he was barred after 40 years. See, when you're a traveller going, that's it. And someone's blacking down no matter where you go. Discrimination will never stop with the travellers. Never, I never can see it. For the last couple of years, anyway, I got worse.
Yeah.
But even though I know we face huge discrimination, the way you explained it there, what about our history? The importance of our history, the importance of handing it down to our children and being recorded and being represented in different museums and stuff like that, where we're in some places we're not.
So that's kind of, back to the culture and history piece, and of course the discrimination is absolutely terrible and stifling.
I know Martin brought it up, that he was never taught it in school, but that's where it needs to start. Traveller history, culture and language needs to be taught in schools to travellers, young travellers and settled people. So do you both have an understanding of what travellers are? Do you know what I mean? To teach that history in school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think at one time when you were in school and when I was in school, you were never talked about. We always hid who you were. So the more you hid, the better you felt, because there's loads of different people in school, only travellers. Where if you look at Ireland now, we have so many different groups of people in school. You have lots of cultural days and lots of celebrations, celebrating different groups of people from different countries. We never had that when we were growing up in school. So you always hide your identity when you come out. You were never taught of being a traveller, so the more you hid it, the better for yourself. Where if that was in schools today, I think the younger generation would be much prouder of themselves and would actually come out and identify themselves as well as being travellers. But I think education is key in it.
So education and celebration in schools as a starting point. Martin Reilly?
Yeah.
And Bridgie Collins, Biddy Collins, Mike Collins. Do you want to say thanks so much for taking part in the panel discussion today? Mary Bridget, thanks for the input too, really appreciate it. I want to say thanks to the Finglas Library here and the Dublin Festival of History, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. We're hoping that this is going to be recorded and it can be seen again for people if ever they're looking to see it. If you'd like to know more about Pavee Roads Home, you can go on the Pavee Point website, paveepoint.ie, and if you just look up Pavee Roads Home on the internet, you'll find it easily enough. But as Martin and Michael were saying earlier, if you're interested in traveller culture and history, just ask questions. Maybe that's a good starting point. We're going to leave you now, and thanks again to Bridgie, because Bridgie's going to sing us out with One Starry Night.
One starry night as I lay sleeping. One stormy night as I lay in bed. I dreamed I heard wagon wheels are screeching. But when I awoke, my love had fled. I searched the highway like boys and highways. I searched that over camping places too. I will inquire all of our people. Oh, tales no sight of light of you. For it's many's the my love, or you I've traveled. Many's the hour, love, what you I spend. I thought you were my love forever. But now I find, love, you were only lent. I am drunk today, sometimes I'm sober. A constant roving from town to town. But when I am dead, love, and my days are over, Come on, my dear friends, and lay me down. For it's many's that my love would you I travel. Many's the hour, love, would you I spend. I thought you were my love forever. But now I find, love, you were only lent. But now I find, love, you were only lent. Oh.
I think that's us.